Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Regina Salsabila Darlis Putri from A1 2021 with student number 21220135. In here, I want to presentation about my final project of English specific purposes. Okay, for question number 1, jelaskan dengan mendetail mengenai asal mula munculnya ISP menurut sumber-sumber bacaan yang telah saudara telaah. Sebutkan sumbernya dan tahun berapa dalam bentuk referensi. According to the book of English for Specific Purposes, a learning-centered approach by Tom Hutchinson and Alan Waters, the origin of ESP can be traced back to the end of the Second World War in 1945, an era of great expansion. This expansion created an unified world dominated by technology and commerce, whose advance created an international demand for language. For a variety of reasons, most notably the post-war economic power of the United States, this role fell to English. The effect was to create a new mass of people who want to learn English because English was the key to international currency. Previously, the reason for learning English were not well defined. Knowledge of a foreign language was generally considered a sign of a well-rounded education, but few questioned why it was necessary. However, as English became the accepted international language of technology and commerce, a new generation of learners emerged who know exactly why they were learning a language. Businessmen and women who want to sell their product, mechanics who needed to read instruction manuals, doctors who needed to keep up with development in their field, and a whole range of students whose course of study included textbook and journal available only in English. This development were accelerated by the oil crisis in the early 1970s, which led to a large flow of Western funds and expertise to oil-rich countries. Time and money constraints created the need for cost-effective courses with clearly defined objectives. The overall effect of all this development was to put pressure on the language teaching professions to deliver the goods. English had become accountable to the scrutiny of the wider world, and the traditional leisurely and purpose-free stroll through the landscape of the English language seems no longer appropriate in the harsher realities of the marketplace. Question number 2. Mengapa saudara sebagai mahasiswa Prodi Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris, IKIP Siliwangi harus bisa mendeskripsikan perkembangan ISP? As a student in the English education program at IKIP Siliwangi, I need to be able to describe the development of English Specific Purposes or ESP because it is very relevant to the needs of the growing world of work. And by understanding the ESP, I can identify ways to teaching English that are more targeted and appropriate to specific context. And as future teachers, we need to be able to describe the development of ESP because it is a teacher's responsibility to explain or describe the development of ESP so that students know that the knowledge they are learning is focused on the specific purposes. ESP learning increases students' motivation because they see firsthand the benefits of the language skill they have learned. Next, question number 3. Bagaimana cara saudara mengidentifikasi pendekatan, approach, dan produk dari ESP? Sebutkan contoh-contoh pendekatan, approach, dan produk dari ESP beserta pemaparannya. ESP approach and product are identified through a need analysis that focus on the specific needs of learners. This process involves identifying the purpose of communication, the context of language use, and the relevant language forms. ESP uses language-centered approach, focusing on analyzing the language required, such as passive structures in technical reports, skill-centered approach, focusing on developing specific skills such as reading, academic journals, or writing reports, and learning-centered approach, emphasizing the way learners learn the language in specific contexts. ESP products such as modules, textbook, or trainings are tailored to this approach. For example, English for business purposes modules teach business language structures. English for medical purposes training focus on medical communication and terminology. And English for tourism materials include simulated interactions with tourists. In essence, ESP is designed to help learners achieve language competence relevant to their professional or academic field. Question number 4, jelaskan dengan terperinci tentang bagaimana saudara mengidentifikasi language description. The language description is the way in which the language system is broken down and described for the purposes of learning. There are 6 points in language description. Number 1 is classical or traditional grammar. The description of English and other languages is based on the grammar of classical language, namely Greek and Latin. It is based on an analysis of the roles played by each word in a sentence. It is described in this way because classical language are based on languages where the grammatical function of each word in a sentence is made clear by use of proper inflection, thereby improving our knowledge of how language works. 2. Structural linguistic describes the term of syntagmatic language, the grammar that carries the main proportions simply, but grammatical descriptions are necessary when there are large areas of language use that cannot be explained. Number 3, transformational generative (TG) grammar. The grammar that view language as a collection of syntagmatic patterns held sway until its publication in 1957 in Synthetic Grammar by Noah Chomsky. Chomsky argued that there were problems with language because it was still analyzed and described in isolation from the minds of the people who produced it, which was seen as a reflection of human truth patterns. There are 2 levels of meaning, the deepest level, which concern the rules of thought, and the surface level, where thoughts are expressed through the syntax grammar of language. Chomsky states that there are 2 things that affect teaching. Language affects the rules, and there is a relationship between meaning and form. There is appearance is more about surface structure, and ability is more about the deepest level of rule meaning. Number 4 is language variation and register analysis. Language are different, but they serve the same purposes of communicating different things analyzed with different variations. The concept of different language provides level of ESP type based on register analysis. If language variation is based on context, then it's possible to recognize it based on the type of language associated with a particular context, such as in the area of knowledge. 5. Functional or national grammar. Functional concerns social behavior and represent the purpose of the speaker or writer, while Nozian idea reflect that the way things are in the human mind. The functional view of language began to influence language teaching in 1970. As for notions, the right word match can be achieved because notion and function represent categories of human mind in its social behavior that are less odds with language. 6. Discourse rhetorical analysis. The context of the sentence is also important in the formation of meaning. The meaning of a sentence can be the same in different contexts. In other words, there is language that has meaning for different purposes. Next question is terkait istilah theories of learning. Jelaskan bagaimana cara saudara memahami tentang perkembangan metode mengajar, khususnya tentang English for specific purposes. The development of teaching methods in ESP focuses on learner needs and specific contexts. This method begins with needs analysis and language-based materials, but have evolved into a more learner-centered approach. In ESP, teachers not only teach a language technically, but also build skills to meet specific challenge in particular fields such as business, engineering, or medical. With this approach, ESP learning is more flexible, relevant, and focused on how students use language in the real world. Number 6, elaborasi dan jelaskan pemahaman saudara tentang kemampuan untuk melakukan need analysis ketika saudara akan mengajar ESP. Okay, when I'm going to teach ESP, the ability to conduct a need analysis is very important. A need analysis aims to find out learner wants, needs, and shortcomings before organizing a course. According to Bergsaitin, 2008, need analysis is the key to gathering insider views on ESP. First, gather information through surveys, interviews, or group discussion to understand the context in which students will use English. For example, if I were teaching to professionals in the medical fields, I will find out the technicalities they need and the communication situation they often face. With this information, I can design relevant and appropriate curriculum and teaching materials so that learning becomes more effective and can be directly applied there in real life. Question number 7, mengapa saudara perlu memahami konsep tentang approach to course design? Course design is the process by which raw data about learning needs is interpreted to produce an integrated set of teaching learning experiences. The purpose of course design is to lead the learner to a specific level of knowledge. Why we should understand the concept of an approach to course design is because to generate a syllabus, select, adapt, or write materials that fit the syllabus. Develop a methodology for teaching the materials and determines the evaluation procedures that will be used to measure progress. There are 3 main types of course design. Number 1 is language-centered course design. This is the simple type of course design that probably is the most familiar to English teachers. It is very prevalent in ESP. The language-centered course design process aims to draw a direct connection between the analysis of the target situation and the ESP course content. Number 2, skill-centered approach. This approach emphasizes on specific skills such as reading or listening. For example, if learners need to read scientific journals, then the focus is on developing reading comprehension for scientific texts. For example, if learner needs to read scientific journals, then the focus is on developing reading comprehension for scientific texts. Number 3 is learner-centered approach. The learner-centered approach is based on the principle that learning is entirely determined by the learners. Learning is seen as a process where learners using their existing knowledge or skill to make sense of new information flows. Nomor 8, bagaimana saudara mendeskripsikan konsep jenis-jenis silabus menurut sudut pandang ESP course designs and material development? There are several syllabus differed by its function. Number 1 is the evaluation syllabus. The kind of syllabus will be most familiar as the document that is handed down by ministries or other regulating bodies. It states what successful learner will know by the end of the course. In effect, it puts in record the basis of which success or failure will be evaluated. Number 2, the organizational syllabus. The syllabus states the order in which is to be learned. It is more familiar in the form of the content page of a textbook. The organizational syllabus differs from the evaluation syllabus in that it carries assumptions about the nature of learning as well as language science in organizing the items in syllabus. Number 3, the material syllabus. The first person to interpret the syllabus is usually the material writers. In writing material, the author adds yet more assumption about the nature of language, language learning, and language use. The author decides the context in which the language will appear, the relative weightings and interrogation of skills, the number and type of exercises to be spent on any aspect of language, the degree of recycling of revision, and this can all have their effect whether and how well something is learned. Number 4, the teacher syllabus. The great majority of students in the world learn language through the mediation of a teacher. The teacher can influence the clarity, intensity, and frequency of any item and thereby affect the image that the learners receive. Number 5 is class syllabus. A lesson is communicative event created by the interaction of a number of forces. The classroom then created the condition that will influence the nature of the plain lessons. The classroom is a dynamic and interactive environment which influence the nature of what is taught and what is learned. Therefore, the classroom produced its own syllabus, Brin 1984. Number 6, learner syllabus. The learner syllabus is the network of knowledge that developed in the learner's brain that enable the learners to understand and retain further knowledge. The learner syllabus belongs to internal syllabus, which is a retrospective record of what is to be learned. Candlin 1984. Next question is number 9. Bagaimana saudara mendeskripsikan konsep material evaluation menurut sudut pandang ESP course, design, and material development? There are 4 aspects of ESP based on Alderson and Waters 1983. A. What should be evaluated? B. How to evaluate an ESP course. 3. Who should be involved in the evaluation? D. When and how often should the evaluation be conducted? A. What should be evaluated? Everything that is significant should be evaluated. However, there are 2 important limitations. A. The teacher ability to gather information. B. The teacher ability to use the information to evaluate. An ESP course is fulfilled 2 main needs of the learners. The first is the needs as language learners, and the second is the needs of language user. Through the objective of the ESP course, evaluation is concerned with assessing the extent of their needs. B. How to evaluate an ESP course. To collect evaluation information in this first stage process, then it is collected and summarized. If the information is extensive, it needs to be discussed with all interested parties and conclusion drawn. Finally, it is included in the evaluation report as a basis for further discussion and decision making. C. Who should be involved in the evaluation. Every colleges will have a different opinion on who should be involved in ESP course evaluation. The views of learners can support of ESP course and be useful as feedback. How to get information by asking who you ask and how you ask is important. D. When and how often should evaluation take place? According to Hassenson and Waters in 2008, the most appropriate time to evaluate a course is A. In the first week of the course. B. Periodically during the course. C. At the end of the course. D. At the end of the course at each meeting, as this is effective to find out how well the course achieved the objective. Next question is number 10. Material design adalah bagian penting dari ESP course, design, and material development. Menurut saudara, mengapa hal tersebut benar dan bagaimana saudara mengaplikasikan material design? Materials provide a stimulus for the learning process. Good material contain interesting text, fun, active, activities, and opportunities for learners to use their knowledge and skills, material that both learners and teachers can cope with. And then materials have organized the teaching learning process by providing path through a complex language material to learners. Good material should provide a clear and understandable unit structure that will guide teachers and students. C. Materials contain a view of the nature of language learning. Good materials should truly reflect what you think and feel about the learning process. Next, material reflect the nature of the learning task. Materials should strive to create a balanced view that reflects the complexity of the task while still appearing manageable. Next, material can have a very useful function in broadening the base of teacher training by introducing teacher new technique. Uh, Next is teaching materials provide models of correct and appropriate language use. Question number 11. Elaborasi dan jelaskan pemahaman saudara tentang kemampuan untuk memahami konsep metodologi ketika saudara mengajar ISP. I understand that the ability to understand the concept of methodology is essential when teaching English for specific purposes, ESP. The right methodology helps me design and implement effective teaching according to the needs and context of the students. In ESP, I need to choose methods that focus on specific learning objectives, such as use the text-based learning, which allows students to practice language in real situations relevant to their fields. In addition, I should also consider the use of authentic materials and interactive approach to increase student engagement. By understanding the various methodologies, I can adapt my teaching strategies to be more responsive to students' needs so that they can develop the English language skill necessary for success in their professional environment. Next question, jelaskan konsep evaluation yang saudara pahami ketika mengajar ESP. Mengapa harus ada evaluasi di akhir pembelajaran? The concept of evaluation ESP teaching involves the process of measuring the effectiveness of materials, teaching method, and student achievement. Evaluation aims to ensure that specific learning objectives have been achieved and students are gaining language skills relevant to their needs. Reason for evaluation at the end of learning. Number 1 is measure students' understanding. Assess the extent to which students master the required language skills. Number 2 is assessing the effectiveness of the materials. Evaluate whether the materials used were appropriate and help achieve the objective. Number 4 is provide feedback, improving future teaching methods, materials, or approaches. Number 4 is providing progress reports, provides an overview of student development. Next question is number 13. Menurut saudara, mengapa saudara harus memahami konsep the role of ESP teacher? I had to understand the concept of the role of ESP teacher because this role is crucial in creating effective and relevant learning experiences for students. And as ESP teachers, I am not only responsible for teaching English, but also for understanding the specific context in which students will use the language. This means I need to have in-depth knowledge of students' professional or academic fields so that I can design appropriate teaching materials and methods. In addition, I also serve as a facilitator who helps students develop the necessary communication skills, provides constructive feedback, and created a supportive learning environment. Next question is 14. Mengapa saudara berpikir bahwa guru yang menyenangkan akan membuat murid-murid akan menikmati pembelajaran bahasa Inggris untuk tujuan spesifik seperti English for fisioterapi dan lain-lain? I believe that a pleasant teacher will make students enjoy learning English for specific purposes such as English for physiotherapy because it's positive learning atmosphere can increase student motivation and engagement. When teachers are able to create a friendly and supportive environment, students will feel more comfortable to actively participate, ask questions, and experiments with the language. Fun teachers can also creative and interactive teaching methods such as role plays or simulation, which make the material more interesting and relevant to their context. And last but not least, question number 15. Ceritakan pengalaman saudara untuk meningkatkan kemampuan dalam mengajar ESP. Apa saja yang saudara lakukan? My experience in improving my ability in teaching English for specific purposes or ESP is that I start by learning the student needs through the need analysis. For example, understanding the situation they face and the type of language they need. Secondly, I look for relevant reference materials either from books, journals, or online sources. Then I adjust them to the learning context. In addition, I also try to attend ESP trainings and workshops, which help me understand more specific teaching techniques such as task-based learning or problem-solved activities. Thirdly, I start integrating simulation and hands-on practice in the classroom, such as role plays with a real-world scenarios. And finally, I always ask for feedback from students so that I know whether my methods are effective and what needs to be improved. Okay, so maybe that's all for me. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.